We're back.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us in the Narragansett Credit Union Broadcast Center. Pretty cool programming happening at Norman Bird Sanctuary. I would like to welcome Rachel Holbert. She is Director of Education with Norman Bird Sanctuary. She's joining us via Skype on this now raining in Providence afternoon. Rachel, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. So you have some pretty cool programming coming up tomorrow, Thursday, July 13th from 6 to 7. It's called The Story of Hanging Rock, and you're really telling the story of how Hanging Rock in Middletown was formed. And we were back and forth talking about how you're really trying to explain and bring geology to people who really might not know a lot about geology. Really, how did this program come about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Hanging Rock is sort of this iconic overlook at the bird sanctuary. It's traveled by thousands of people every year. You can see Block Island Sound, so people love that spot. And geology often feels like this scary topic, but I wanted to approach it from a lens of storytelling because it helps people to understand the landscape that is all around them.
Yeah, no kidding. And what I found interesting, kind of when I was doing research a couple years ago, that Hanging Rock has really inspired people throughout the decades. I mean, people had come and been part of artist colonies. So this has really just been this inspired people throughout the centuries in paintings and pictures. So it's really just kind of like an iconic part of our landscape. So really, as you go into programming like this, do you think it's really just kind of a part of a fascination that we all have as we all live here?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, people are on the beach, on Second Beach, and they're looking up at this rock. And for those who have not been to Aquidneck Island before, they're thinking, how the heck do I get up to that rock, right? The answer is through Norman Bird Sanctuary. And I've actually been to the National Gallery in Washington, D.C. and seen paintings of Hanging Rock, which is pretty cool. So you're right, definitely an inspiration for artists and philosophers and writers throughout the century.
So tell me just a little bit about how this formed, what you're going to be talking about in the program, because you look at this and it is pretty incredible, just the formation of it. I mean, it's pretty interesting. So how did it form? How did it get there?
Sure. Yeah, so before we can even talk about glaciers at all, we look back about 450 million years ago, and at that time the Earth's plates were moving pretty significantly, and North America actually collided with Africa. And believe it or not, there were mountains in New England at that time that were higher than the Himalayan mountains.
Wow.
Which is incredible, right? So over time, over a long period of time, those mountains eroded, and there were streams where smooth river stones and sediment built up. Flash forward only 100 million years, and those sediments actually lithified or turned into rock. And so that is what Hanging Rock Ridge is made up of. It's the sediment of those ancient mountain streams, which is pretty incredible.
Wow. And kind of fascinating that's what's left, that chunk. So there's some other interesting landscape within that area. You have Purgatory Chasm, which is not too far away relatively. I mean, is that kind of the same story? Those rocks right along that cliff there, was that kind of formed the same way?
Yeah, so this rock type that we see on Hanging Rock is in a few other places in the immediate area. And this conglomerate is what it's called. It's really special to this area, so we don't see it too many places outside of southern Aquidneck Island. But there is a series of parallel ridges. There's 7 ridges, and 2 of those fall on Norman Bird Sanctuary property.
Cool. That's pretty cool. That's pretty unique to be able to claim that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So for people who are interested in the landscape of southern New England, of Aquidneck Island, and maybe people who aren't, some people might be like, rocks are rocks, right? I mean, why is this important to be able to tell this story?
Yeah, it's interesting. We interact with the landscape when we drive over our bridges in Rhode Island. When we're out on the water, we're out on Narragansett Bay, and that has a history started by the glaciers. And when they move through this area, when we're out hiking, those landscapes that we're hiking, I find that people end up having questions about where they are and again, why those landforms look the way they do. So this is directly related to a lot of our day-to-day activities and travels.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people might not necessarily think how things were formed. You know, we talk about mountain ridges and that kind of thing, but if you're looking at certain parts of our landscape, it is pretty powerful to think that something was formed, 4 million years ago or 450 million years ago, right?
Right.
It's pretty impressive. Talk to me just a little bit about, because I'm looking at some of the notes that you had sent and some of the things you'll be talking about. Does anybody, when they're out on the sanctuary or when you're looking at these different kind of rocks, stuff like that, does anybody find fossils, whether it be of leaves or anything kind of cool like that?
That's a great question. So one of the things that I love to teach about Hanging Rock Ridge is that it's not just sedimentary rock and it's not just metamorphic rock. Typically we find fossils in sedimentary rock, but this rock type has actually been squeezed. There's pressure and heat that acted on it. So we don't really find too many fossils, actually. But what we do find instead are these tiny little crystals of magnetite. So this ridge, when it was squeezed and heated up, some of those minerals melted, and as they cool, they form these little crystalline structures. So today we actually go out on the ridges with our students with little refrigerator magnets, and you can even do this if you visit Norman Bird Sanctuary. But you can put that magnet in the sediment, and you'll find these really beautiful little shiny crystals.
Wow, that's amazing. So could you take just literally a refrigerator magnet, or would you need something more heavy duty?
No, a really weak magnet like what you would pull off of your refrigerator is perfect.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So can people find that anywhere else, or is that pretty unique to our area as well?
This is something that we see with our rock formations here with this pudding stone conglomerate. But if you do go down to Third Beach especially, that rock has eroded over a long period of time. So our sands on Third Beach also have those magnetite crystals. So it's really fun when you're packing up your pails and your shovels to go down to the beach. Bring your magnets too to look for that magnetite.
Oh, wow, that's really fun. And I bet a lot of people might not necessarily know that, right?
It's true.
So something super fun if you can get a good parking spot at Third Beach for the day. Talk to me a little bit. So we've talked a little bit about how Hanging Rock has formed and a little bit about what makes those rocks unique and that area unique. Talk to me a little bit about Narragansett Bay, because this is such a big part of Rhode Island's life, right? I mean, it's part of our economy, it's part of our tourism, it's part of our infrastructure, you could even say. How did Narragansett come to be? How did it form?
Yeah, I mean, we're the ocean state, right? So this is definitely part of our identity as Rhode Islanders. So Narragansett Bay was essentially carved out by the glacier that moved through here. About 20,000 years ago, it kind of reached as far out as it was going to go. And Block Island is actually what we call the end moraine. That's the end of where the glacier extended, and it kind of pushed out all of this material all the way out there. So.
Wow, that's fascinating. So was Block Island, was that attached to the mainland and then the glacier just pushed it out?
It was more of loose sediment that ended up being just shoved out there. It was a structure that didn't exist. And the same is true for Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, and Cape Cod as well.
That is
pretty amazing.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and so the reason why we still have Aquidneck Island, Jamestown, and a smattering of other islands in Narragansett Bay is that those were a harder rock type that wasn't eroded as dramatically by the glacier. But it also scooped the topsoil off of Hanging Rock, so that's why it's exposed now. And this is something pretty common in New England.
Wow, that is amazing. So is that pretty much the case of those little, the rest of the little islands that you see around the area as well?
Yeah, exactly. So again, those are harder rock types. That material wasn't scooped out as easily by the glacier, so they remained, and here they are today.
Wow. And so when we're looking over the course of, the history of the Earth and geography and geology, is 20,000 years a relatively short amount of time?
It's a drop in the bucket. I'll share a fun fact with you that I just read today. So we think about New England as this beautiful forested landscape, but it's only been that way for 3% of the last 100,000 years. Before that, it was tundra,
Wow.
like the far north, and ice, which is pretty incredible.
Wow, so it definitely much different landscape than we know and love today.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow, that is pretty fascinating, and always neat to try to picture back what things looked like. I mean, we have a pretty decent understanding of the history just being New England, but when you try to think of it in terms of that, it's a whole different ballgame, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty cool. So that's the whole event and program of the Story of Hanging Rock is tomorrow. If you're interested, you can definitely go and check out Norman Bird Sanctuary website and get all the information there. But also, Rachel, you have a pretty fun program, a fundraiser coming up in August. I believe August 3rd is the Summer Beach Bash. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, we're very excited about the Beach Bash. This is one of our summer celebration fundraisers. It's going to be at Third Beach. So that's going to run from 6 p.m. until 9 p.m. And people need to pre-register for it, but your registration includes music. So we'll also have a bonfire on the beach. We'll have ice cream and s'mores included in that ticket, and then also beer and wine, iced tea, lemonade, so all the drinks. And we're encouraging people to bring out a picnic dinner, or they can grab some barbecue from Binge Barbecue Food Truck. And then our education department is going to have a seine net, so we'll be sweeping that net across Third Beach and in the water. But we'll be looking for marine animals, including fish, and it's going to be a great time.
It sounds like a really fun event. It's super family friendly, right? So bring the kids, go out, bring your beach blanket. Don't forget your magnet too, right?
Yeah, your magnets too.
Don't forget your beach pail and your magnets. So that sounds like a great time. That's August 3rd, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I just want to add that the proceeds from that fundraiser will go towards scholarships for schools that want to get out here for field trips or have us come out with our animal ambassadors for classroom outreach programs. So it's for a great cause.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, and just continuing these educational, I mean, you guys have so many educational programs, and so continuing that for scholarships for schools sounds wonderful. So continuing the education and preserving our history, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. Rachel, it's been so wonderful talking to you today. Thank you for sharing that. I hope you're staying much drier and safer than we are here, because I don't know if you've heard, but there's been a ton of thunder. So hopefully you're a little bit drier where you are today. Thank you so much for joining us on Go Local Live. Hopefully we'll catch up with you soon.